Hello everyone, this is Rig and today we are going to discuss about the later Vedic age. In our last video we have discussed the ending of the early Vedic age where we have also discuss some of the important questions and their answers which may be important for you in your exams. Now this video is made according to the ICSE or CISCE board syllabus of class 6. However, if you are from any other board or if you are interested to know about the later Vedic age, you can obviously go through these videos. And as always, please, while you watch this video, before you start watching this video, carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points. And please always try to go through all the points before drawing a particular conclusion. So, without doing any delay, let's begin. Introduction. Now, in introduction, we will understand what it means actually by the term later Vedic age. The later Vedic age spans approximately from 1000 BC to 500 BC. The early Vedic age started from 1500 BC and it continued up to 1000 BC. So, approximately from 1000 BC to 500 BC, we have the later Vedic age. It means that it was a period when all the other Vedas were written, and the early Vedic age is also called the Rig Vedic age, whereas later Vedic age comes after the early Vedic age. During this period, a significant societal changes occurred as Aryans transitioned from semi-nomadic lifestyle to a more settled agricultural society. So this was a time when the Aryans means the people who used to live in India at that point of time, they transitioned from a semi-nomadic lifestyle. Now, what is meant by semi-nomadic lifestyle? It actually means that when people used to stay in one place for a few months, use up its resources, and then used to move to some another place, so that type of lifestyle for staying in some place for like a few months, that lifestyle was called a semi nomadic lifestyle. And nomadic lifestyle actually means changing this place of stay like every 2 or 3 days. That is called nomadic lifestyle. So semi nomadic is not equal to settled lifestyle, but it means settling in a place for 2 or 3 months. So the early Vedic people, the Rig Vedic people, they were semi nomadic in nature, and during the later Vedic period we see that those people who were semi nomadic before are settling down in one place. The later Vedic period marked the spread of Aryans from Sapta Sindhu region eastward to the Ganga Yamuna Doab and the parts of western Uttar Pradesh and Kashi. So this was a time when people settled in the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Ganga Yamuna Doab is the place, the fertile patch of land in between the rivers Ganga and Yamuna. So before this, people used to live in the Sapta Sindhu region. Sapta Sindhu region means Indus River, its tributaries, and river Saraswati. All these rivers together are called the Sapta Sindhu rivers, and the region surrounding these rivers was called the area of Sapta Sindhu. So Sapta Sindhu was the area for the Rig Vedic people. However, during the later Vedic people, we see that people have migrated a little eastward, that is in the Ganga Yamuna Doab, and the settlements stretched as far as western Uttar Pradesh and Kashi. Society witnessed shifts in religious, political, and economic structures, laying the foundation for classical Hindu culture. So this was the time when classical Hindu culture seems to have started. And how did it start? With a change in the religious, political, and economic structure during the later Vedic times. Now we will go through the sources of information of the later Vedic period. And the sources are mainly of two types: literary and archaeological. Literary sources means texts or the written sources of a period, and archaeological sources means the evidences in which are present physically. The material evidences of a period are called its archaeological sources. So, literary sources, the primary texts from this period are the later Vedas: Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. So, these three Vedas were composed during the time of the later Vedic age, that is, from 1000 BC to 500 BC. And what are the texts? Samved, Yajurved, and Atharvaved. However, Rig Ved, the first Veda, was composed from the period of 1500 BC to 1000 BC. That means during the early Vedic age. Supplementary texts such as the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads provided further insights into the societal norms, religious practices, and the philosophical thought. So there were other texts also which were written during this period, like the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Brahmanas are texts about Brahman. Brahman here means the ultimate reality. So, Brahmanas are not the texts written by the Brahmin people. No, it is not like that. Brahmanas are texts which focus on the Brahman, that means the ultimate reality. Aranyakas are texts of how to live in nature, how should be the human interaction with the nature. And Upanishads are proses or stories which explains the thoughts of the Vedas. So these things provided insight into the societal norms, religious practices, and philosophical thoughts of the later Vedic people. Upanishads were particularly significant for their focus on spiritual wisdom. So, Upanishads were texts which focused on spiritual wisdom or spiritual knowledge, introducing the concepts of Brahman, the ultimate reality, and Atman, the individual soul. So, Brahman is a concept that has been explained in Upanishads also, and that means the ultimate reality. And Atman is the individual soul. So every time, according to the ancient Hindu philosophy, every man or woman takes birth and has the Atman in them. And these Atman takes forms of different physical bodies. This Atman comes in different physical bodies. So the intention or the motive of life on earth is so that to do good things in order for the Atman and Brahman to become one. That is the focus of the Upanishads. Archaeological sources. These are the materialistic remains of the later Vedic period. Excavations in various locations have revealed artifacts and structural remains that align with the descriptions found in the text. So there are different excavation sites which have been excavated by the Archaeological Survey of India, and they have revealed different artifacts. Artifacts means materials from the past. So these artifacts are there of the later Vedic period, and also there are structural remains. Structural remains means big remains of structures, remains of buildings, remains of houses. So these are structural remains. And these two artifacts and the structural remains are found to be exactly what has been described in the texts of the later Vedic periods. Hence, they align with the descriptions found in the texts of the later Vedic period. The material culture, pottery, and other finds from this era helped to corroborate the lifestyle changes described in the later Vedic texts. So, in later Vedic texts, many things have been described, and when we get the materialistic remains from the later Vedic period, we can verify whether what is written in the text is correct or not. So, that is the function of the archaeological sources, to prove the literary sources are correct or not. Now, social life. How was the social life of people during the later Vedic times? Family structure. The family was patriarchal and patrilineal. The birth of a son was celebrated and he ensured the family line. So, family line was on the basis of hereditary of the male member. Just like today, you take up your father's surname, not your mother's surname. So, that system originated from the later Vedic times. And so family was patrilineal and also it was patriarchal. Patriarchal means the power of the family, the power of decision making in the family rested in the eldest male member. So thus family was patriarchal because the power was in the hands of the male members, and it was patrilineal because the name of the family depended on the hereditary of the male member. And so because of this focus on patriarchy, the birth of a son was celebrated as he ensured the family line. So it was considered that the son will bear the name of the family and will expand the family. So the birth of a son was celebrated. The birth of a daughter was not celebrated that much during the later Vedic times. This is one of the main changes which happened in the later Vedic times, that is, men and women were not treated equal. The concept of Gotra lineage gained importance, symbolizing familial identity. So, Gotra means lineage, means the family line. Your family line becomes your Gotra. So, this Gotra concept became very important because it is the identification mark of the family, it is the familial identity. Women's role in society became more restricted compared to the early Vedic period. They were largely excluded from religious ceremonies. So, during the early Vedic times, for a religious ceremony to be conducted, women were very important. They were given respect in the society and they were treated equal to men in different aspects. But in the later Vedic times, we find that the women were treated with more restrictions and they were not given as much freedom as the men, and hence they were excluded from the religious ceremonies which were very important. Marriage and customs. Marriage became an important institution with the goal of producing progeny to continue the family line. So, marriage was mainly done with a goal of introducing new members to the family line, and members as in male members. So marriage was an important institution. And what was the aim of marriage? Why people were married? In order to produce more children, especially boys, because they would continue the family line. As we have already discussed, the family was patriarchal and patrilineal. The Ashwamedha, which is the horse sacrifice, and Rajasua, which is the royal consecration and other rituals highlighted the period's complex social and religious customs. So these sacrificial rituals became very important. In Ashwamedha sacrifice, which is the horse sacrifice, a king used to let loose a horse. A horse of the king used to roam around freely, and if some people obstructs the path of the horse, that means the king will have to go and fight with those people and retrieve the horse. Thus, if the horse is not restricted, then the king becomes a great king with a huge amount of area, with a huge kingdom. So thus Ashwamedha sacrifice was a projection of power for the king, and Rajasuya sacrifice means appointment of a new king. That also used to happen with elaborate ritualistic rituals, and thus all these kinds of sacrificial rituals became very common during the later Vedic times. Four ashrams. Ashrams here does not mean places where saints stay as we know today, but ashrams in the later Vedic period basically means stages of life. Now, what were the stages of life for a person in the later Vedic period? The later Vedic period mentions four stages of life known as ashrams, which structured an individual's life. So, an individual's life was divided into four stages, and thus the later Vedic period mentioned four stages, also known as four ashrams. Brahmacharya, the first stage, which means the student life, a period dedicated to education and learning under a guru. So there will be a guru. Guru here does not mean a spiritual guru. That guru will be a teacher. That guru will be teaching maths. It will be teaching Vigyan or science. It will be teaching grammar. So a guru is basically a teacher. Sometimes the guru also teaches fight and weaponry. So all these things were part of learning during the later Vedic period. And this stage, when a man was a student, that stage was called Brahmacharya or student's life. Grihastha. Grihastha means the householder's life. This stage focused on family life, marriage, and societal responsibilities. So, according to the later Vedic customs, there used to be a stage after the student's life when a person is supposed to make his or her own family, and that could happen with the process of marriage. And also, there were different societal responsibilities which needed to be fulfilled at the time of grihastha, which in other words also mean householder's life. Then came vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means life of a hermit. Individuals gradually withdrew from the worldly duties, handling responsibilities to the next generation. So this was a life of retirement. So during this stage, a man used to live like an hermit. And what used to happen there? The individuals withdrew from the worldly duties, means they moved away from the attachments of life. They lived like a hermit. So they had to let go of all the worldly duties and responsibilities. And so, who took over the responsibilities? The responsibilities were taken over by the next generation. So Vanaprastha is a period in human's life during the later Vedic period when an individual withdrew from the worldly duties and handed over the responsibilities to the next generation. The last stage is also called sannyasa. Sannyasa means renunciation. It is a stage when you let go of all your desires. The final stage of life is dedicated to spiritual pursuits and renunciation of material desires. So, this was a stage which was dedicated to gaining or attaining spiritual wisdom through deep meditation. And it it meant letting go of all the desires in one's life. So that was the stage of sannyasa. So we have seen four stages, beginning with brahmacharya, which is the student's life, then came grihastha, which is the householder's life, then came vanaprastha, which is the hermit's life, and after that we have sannyasa, which means renunciation and letting go of all the desires and dedicating to the spiritual pursuits. So these are the four stages or four ashramas of the later Vedic life. Next up, we have the Varna system. As we know, in the early Vedic period, the Varna was attributed to a person based on his or her occupation. However, it changed a lot during the later Vedic period. How did it change? The social structure evolved into a more rigid Varna system, dividing society into four castes. So this time Varna became very rigid. Rigid means one cannot change their Varna. Whatever Varna you are born into, whatever family you are born into, your Varna will remain like that only. You cannot change even with your karma. Karma means even with the works that you do, you cannot change your Varna. That means it became very rigid. Brahmins were the topmost in the Varna system. They were the priests and the scholars, were responsible for performing rituals and preserving sacred knowledge. So these are the priests and the scholars, and what was their work? They were responsible for performing the religious rituals and preserving of sacred knowledge. That was the work of the Brahmins. Next came the Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers who held the political power and protected the society. So these were the ruling classes, and also the warriors were there in the Kshatriya Varna, which means what was their power? They had enormous political power. All the decision making power resided in the hands of the Kshatriyas. And also, since they were warriors, it was their duty to protect the society. Next came the Vaishyas. Vaishyas are merchants and agriculturalists. So they were the business people. They engaged in trade, commerce, and agriculture. So, what was the responsibility of the Vaishyas? They engaged in trade, commerce, and agriculture. They were big farmers, and also sometimes they were merchants and uh, people who participated in commercial activities. Shudras. Shudras were the laborers who served the other three classes and were generally excluded from religious rituals. So, Shudras were the lowest in the Varna system. They were considered to be laborers, and it was their duty to serve the upper three Varnas. So, Varna system became very rigid in the later Vedic society, and whatever varna you are born into, you will have to follow that those rituals only, those purposes only, and your varna cannot change even with the help of your education. So a person who is born as a shudra will have to do the works of a shudra only. No matter how much educated that person gets, that person will never become a brahmin or a kshatriya, which was not the case in the early Vedic period, where people could change the varna according to their occupation. Next came how was the education in the later Vedic society. Education during this period was primarily focused on Vedic knowledge, with gurukuls, means teachers' residences, serving as centers of learning. So education during the later Vedic period happened with the help of gurukuls. Gurukuls are the places where the gurus used to stay. Gurus means teachers used to stay, and the teacher here stayed with his family, and all the students used to go there and stay along with the teacher and learn the basic principles of life. So that was the system of education during the later Vedic period, that is with the help of gurukuls. Subjects included rituals, grammar, astronomy, and philosophy. So it is a common concept, a misunderstood concept, thinking that a Brahmin guru used to teach religious rituals only. No, that is not the case. A teacher or a guru was expert in many other subjects. So they taught rituals, they taught grammar, they taught astronomy. Astronomy means study of celestial bodies, and also they taught philosophy. So all these subjects were taught by the teacher in his gurukul. Students, mainly boys from upper three Varnas, were expected to live with their guru during their education. So, students, mainly the boys, because women were not given proper education during the later Vedic period, hence, students, mainly the boys, used to stay with their teacher. Staying means they used to stay for day and night for years. The years of one's brahmacharya was totally focused on staying in Gurukul with the teacher and to get knowledge. So, mainly boys from the upper three Varnas. The Shudras were excluded from education. Hence, the boys from the upper three Varnas, that means Brahmin boys, Kshatriya boys, and Vaishya boys, were given education by making them stay in the Guru's house or the Gurukul. Oral transmission was the main mode of education, with memorization being highly valued. So, what was the main mode of education? The mode of education was transmitting the knowledge, transmitting the wisdom with the help of oral traditions. Means people used to memorize different texts or different education materials, and they used to transmit the knowledge with the help of memorization. So memorizing was a very unique talent of the later Vedic period, because it was only mode through which knowledge used to be transferred from one generation to another. Hence education during the later Vedic period mainly happened in the gurukuls, with gurus teaching the boys of the upper three Varnas. Next came the most important aspects in the life of the later Vedic people, that is religion. So, what was the religion? How were the religious customs? Religion during the later Vedic period shifted from nature worship to a more ritualistic and sacrificial practice. In the early Vedic period, we have the gods like Indra, which is a god of thunder, and we have gods like Agni, means fire god. These gods were forces of nature respected as deities. So that was the system in the early Vedic period, which means nature worship. But during the later Vedic period, the system became more ritualistic and a sacrificial practice. Sacrificial practice means not merely worshipping the gods, but also giving something to the gods was mainly focused upon. The major deities included Prajapati, the creator, Indra, the warrior, Agni, the fire god, and Varuna, the protector of cosmic order. So these were the important gods during the later Vedic times: Prajapati, Indra, Agni, and Varuna. The concept of three gods, that is Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar, those that concept also came during the later Vedic period. Female deities like Lakshmi, Durga, and Kali were also worshipped. So, female goddesses like Lakshmi, Durga, and Kali were also very important during the later Vedic period. They originated during the later Vedic period. New forms of rituals and sacrifices such as the Ashwamedha and Rajasuya became prominent. So these kind of sacrificial rituals was not the main ritual during the early Vedic times. However, during the later Vedic times, it was seen that if you give something to the god in the form of sacrifice, then only your prayers will have validity. So major sacrificial rituals like the Ashwamedha sacrifice and the Rajasuya sacrifice became very prominent during the later Vedic period. So, during the later Vedic period, we find the emergence of new gods like Prajapati, Vishnu, and Shiva. So, these gods are very important in the later Vedic time, and also we have existence of female deities like Lakshmi and Durga and also Kali. So that was all for today regarding the later Vedic life. In our next video, we are going to discuss about the economic life of the later Vedic people, political life. We are also going to see in detail about the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. And last of all, we are going to discuss the importance of Vedic culture. We will also try to discuss the important question and answers which may come in your exam. So please stay tuned for the next part. Thank you so much for your love and support.